Hello everyone. For today's video, I would like to take you to a visit to a very particular and atmospheric place, which is also maybe the largest cemetery in the world, or at least the largest ossuary, the Catacombs of Paris. This is going to be an underground journey, but don't worry, nothing bad can happen to us. We are just traveling by the mind, and we are going to discover many things about the fascinating history of these catacombs and also aspects of the history of Paris. So sit down or lay down comfortably. Our descent is starting right now. When you walk today in the streets of the historic center of Paris, what you see, except for a few monuments and buildings, is a fairly recent phase of Paris. It has appeared essentially in the 18th and even more in the 19th century, when Paris went through a process of intense renovation. But before that, Paris already had several other lives. It had been a city of the Renaissance. It had been a medieval city 7 to 8 centuries ago. And at the end of the Middle Age, Paris already had 1 million inhabitants, making it the largest city in the west of Europe. And even before, during the antiquity, Paris was one of the largest cities in the Romanized Gaul. And under the name of Lutetia, its first evolution from a big village to a city, its first urbanization started more than 2 million years ago. Now, when we walk in the streets of Paris, even without knowing it, we are walking above these past, these ancient lives that are buried under our feet. And if we were to go 5 to 10 meters below the surface, we would find the sewers and the metro lines that have been dug since the 19th century. But if we go even deeper, another part of Paris past is waiting for us. And the story started almost with the Romanization of Paris, when stone became necessary to build the city. Out of the monuments of Lutetia, this Romanized Paris, very few remain. There are remains of the ancient Roman bath and also the Roman arenas that were rediscovered in the 19th century during works. But as soon as the urbanization of of Paris started, people started to need stone to build their city. And the most common type of stone on the side of Paris was limestone, which was so abundant that it could be sometimes found at the surface, so that people started to dig to take the stone and use it. But as the city continued to expand during the Roman period, and after that, after a period of decay, after the fall of the Roman Empire, when it grew again in the Middle Age, these quarries had to be found farther and farther from the center, or deeper and deeper. And people, in order to find the stone, started to dig under the surface, creating underground quarries from which the stone was extracted. And this was made during various centuries, and still today many buildings that you can see on the surface in Paris actually use stone that was extracted relatively close to the city in these underground quarries. When more space to build became necessary, the ancient holes in the ground from which stone had been extracted were covered with sometimes just a few meters of building materials, and new buildings or streets were erected above them. But in the modern period, in the 18th century in particular, this expansion and this anarchy started to create problems, sometimes because the underground of Paris was so full of holes and galleries that could collapse. Entire streets or buildings could sometimes disappear overnight because of the ground collapsing. And at the end of the 18th century, a special commission, a few years before the French Revolution, was created to study, to establish a mapping of these galleries under Paris. It appeared that the galleries under Paris were now covering 300 kilometers, 200 miles approximately, and that they had created a complex system, a giant maze underground, like a second city. And even though this network of galleries remains difficult to perfectly know, and sometimes impossible to access, it still exists. But it is so complex and large that no precise and exhaustive map of these galleries exists. And it is this giant and largely unknown network of galleries called the Catacombs. It covers especially the southern part of Paris, under the left bank of the Seine River, and in these dark, sometimes unknown galleries, you are just a few meters under the surface, under a lively city, but the sounds of the surface cannot reach you. The temperature is always stable, close to 14 degrees Celsius. The silence is almost perfect. Only drops of water falling could break it. And parts of these galleries are underwater now, which makes them even more difficult to explore. But there are small groups of passionate people who are called the cataphiles, who like to explore them, sometimes even organize parties underground, even though this is barely legal. And this community has its guides who know small portions of the catacombs, and if one day you take the responsibility to go down and explore them, you will have to do it with a guide, someone who knows this place well enough to make you avoid its dangers. But there is more to the catacombs, and especially a portion of them that have been used in the 19th century, when the growth of Paris made it impossible to find space in cemeteries. These galleries were used to move the bones, the remains of millions of people who were buried before in cemeteries that have disappeared now, and who were removed from these cemeteries and installed in these galleries. And this gave birth, created the largest ossuary in the world, with the remains of probably more than 6 million persons, ancient inhabitants of Paris of every period, who are now resting under its surface. And when this giant ossuary was moved, installed in the catacombs, the craftsmen, the workers and artists too, used the bones and the skulls to create incredible rooms underground. There are engravings on the walls, there are monumental perspectives, and this place looks like the representations we may have seen of the kingdom of death, with thousands and thousands of skulls looking at you, with walls made of bones. And this place, I believe, is one of the most impressive and atmospheric you may see in Paris, but maybe even in your life. And this ossuary is actually a museum. You can visit it if you go to Paris. And among the remains of millions of anonymous Parisians, you will walk close to the skeletons of famous people like Rabelais, French author from the Renaissance, Charles Perrault, the author of various fairy tales such as Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty, the man in the iron mask too, the composer Jean-Baptiste Lully, or classic authors like Blaise Pascal, Racine, and a few famous participants to the French Revolution like Danton or Robespierre. As always, I hope you had a relaxing and interesting time, that it will make you even more curious and willing to know more. I would like to thank all of you for your comments and suggestions and encouragements. That means a lot to me. So thank you for that, and see you soon. Bye bye.